Kamala Harris is running an absolutely stellar presidential campaign. I know that praise for Kamala coming from me might be a bit of a shock, but I mean it. I never would have imagined that a person with her limited capabilities could rise so far above their level of competence without people realizing they have a completely smooth brain. She's managed to do it, though. It truly is an all-American, feel-good story. It goes to show what a little grit and the entire power of the corporate media can do. People are acting as though Donald Trump is in office, and Kamala is what we need to turn this country around. This narrative completely ignores things like facts and logic, little things like she's the current sitting vice president, the borders are the last person in the room during the Afghanistan debacle, and she cast the tie-breaking vote on the ironically named Inflation Reduction Act. But damn it, she's a woman of color, so we should all probably vote for her, right? I'm Tyler Chrestman. Welcome to the Chrestman Conversation. Okay, welcome everybody. Today on the podcast, we are going to talk about a couple different things. We're going to touch on RFK dropping out of the race. We're going to talk about the border wall and this Tom Cotton interview over on ABC. But first, my favorite comment from last week. Now this one, I pulled it randomly from a person I definitely don't know named Liz Chrestman, who said, quote, "I love the Chrestman Conversation." This is, end of quote. This is fantastic to hear. Thank you, random stranger with the same last name as me. I am sure that the Chrestman Conversation will continue to be great just for you. On to our first topic. RFK is out of the race. What does this mean? Why is this important? Let's go over it. His speech, so his dropout speech was absolutely great. It's a little long, not really in terms of speech for political purposes. A half hour really is about all he spoke, half hour, 40 minutes, somewhere around there. So it's not overly long of a speech. It's a little long for people casually observing politics. The speech was great, and there was one part in particular that was really going around social media. It's the first part that I saw. I didn't watch the speech live. So it was the first part I saw, and it's a part that I want to play because I thought it was excellent. I thought he did an excellent job. So I would like to, real quick, I want to play as a 2-minute section that I'm just going to play here so that everyone can at least hear this really important section that I think he just absolutely nails it.
Sense and character, the DNC and its media organs engineered a surge of popularity for Vice President Harris based upon, well, nothing. No policies, no interviews, no debates, only smoke and mirrors and balloons in a highly produced Chicago circus. There in Chicago, a string of Democratic speakers mentioned Donald Trump 147 times just on the first day. Oh, who needs a policy when you have Trump to hate? In contrast, at the RNC convention, President Biden was mentioned only twice in 4 days. I do interviews every day. Many of you have interviewed me. Anybody who asks gets to interview me. Some days I do as many as 10. President Trump, who actually was nominated and won an election, also does interviews daily. How did the Democratic Party choose a candidate that has never done an interview or debate during the entire election cycle? We know the answers. They did it by weaponizing the government agencies. They did it by abandoning democracy. They did it by suing the opposition and by disenfranchising American voters. What most alarms me isn't how the Democratic Party conducts its internal affairs or runs its candidates. What alarms me is the resort to censorship and media control and the weaponization of the federal agencies. When a U.S. president colludes with or outright coerces media companies to censor political speech, it's an attack on our most sacred right of free expression, and that's the very right upon which all of our other constitutional rights rest. President Biden mocked Vladimir Putin's 88% landslide in the Russian elections, observing that Putin and his party controlled the Russian press and that Putin prevented serious opponents from appearing on the ballot. But here in America, the DNC also prevented opponents from appearing on the ballot. And our television networks expose themselves as Democratic Party organs.
Okay, so it nails it. Absolutely nails it there. He touched on a couple things. The First Amendment is the amendment, well, the way he said it, I don't necessarily agree with, but I understand what he's saying. The First Amendment is one of the most important amendments. There's 1 and 2 are clearly the most important of the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. In the first one in particular, the freedom of speech, the freedom of the press, the freedom to peaceably assemble, freedom of religion, those are all in the First Amendment. So you have a government who is trying to censor people they don't agree with based on trumped up charges of misinformation, disinformation, or whatever they want to say. They are in the censorship business now in the federal government. This is not right. This is explicitly prohibited in the First Amendment. I don't care. Whatever you want to say about the pandemic and the need to control the narrative and to fight disinformation and blah, blah, blah. I do not care the justification. I do not agree with it. I think it was ridiculous. I had a podcast that has been taken down on YouTube. I have a strike against my channel due to some misinformation. In the podcast, all I do is quote things from the CDC. I'm not making up things. I was talking about the data from the CDC, and they said it's misinformation because they don't like the conclusions that I draw from the data. It's ridiculous. It's nonsense. I don't traffic in lies. I don't traffic in propaganda. I try and tell the truth the way I see it, and yet even someone like me got censored by YouTube. It's ridiculous. The federal government is in this business, and it's nonsense. And he talks about the weaponization of the Justice Department, the ability to keep the names of people off of ballots in states. He's absolutely right. This idea that the Democrats have right now, that Donald Trump is the threat to democracy. Meanwhile, they are the threats to democracy. They're violating the First Amendment in multiple cases, and they're fine with it because they said, oh, well, everyone was really scared about COVID, so it's fine. We had to combat all those people out there lying about things. Well, it turns out a lot of those people who were censored were actually the people who were right about a lot of things, and that is the ridiculous things. Because here's what they do. Here's what Democrats do. Anyone who wants to take away your freedom, here's what they do. You find someone who is completely off the walls, and I'm going to use Alex Jones as an example, although I don't actually think it's the fairest example out there. He sometimes is a little off the wall, a little cuckoo. You take someone like him. You say he's trafficking in misinformation. You create a policy to say, well, he's lying, he's doing this, he's doing that. And then you use this policy in too broad of a net to catch a bunch of people who aren't in there that you don't like, that you want to put in there, and you lump them together with Alex Jones. And then you're able to take the rights away from relatively normal people, and you say, oh, well, that's fine. And then you just go, well, so imagine this for a second. Let's try and do it on the screen. So on the right-hand side of your screen, imagine Alex Jones is over here. He's on the far right. All right, just let's imagine for a second that that's true, even if you disagree. He's over here. You cast a net to censor Alex Jones. And by casting that net and censoring Alex Jones, you censor a guy kind of to the left of Alex Jones. He's still on the right, but he's just a little to the left of Alex Jones. You catch him in the net. Well, then you can use that guy as a justification to censor this guy who's a little bit farther to the left. And you see how it creeps in. It creeps back towards you, and you get more and more towards the middle, but you still get to censor because you can tie them to someone who's farther to them. You say, oh, well, Alex Jones had on this guy who had on this guy who had on this guy, and therefore they're all far-right extremists, bad, mean, nasty people. It's all lies, but the important thing is the federal government that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is talking about should not be in this business, period, end of story. It doesn't make any sense, and it's ridiculous. And his his bow-out speech is great, and everyone should go watch it. I like him. I disagree with him on a lot of things. He is a Democrat. He has Democratic leanings. The vaccine stuff, they paint him out to be like a crazy person because of it, but he's not. He's very reasonable. If you ever listen to him talk about vaccines, he is very reasonable with what he believes about vaccines. He has a very similar opinion to me in some regards about vaccines, which is that I'm not opposed to vaccines. I've never been opposed to vaccines in my entire life. I do not want people to lie about the efficacy of vaccines. I do not want people to misrepresent the data. And all I think is that we should be careful, because when we invent something new, we need safety standards. We should be careful because we went from giving kids maybe 3 shots a year in the first 2 years of their lives to 30 shots. And you say, well, that's kind of a lot, and maybe we should be careful. I'm not saying vaccines cause autism. I don't believe that. There's no data to prove this. There's nothing that says that that is a supportable thing. The only thing that's ever been published that links vaccines to autism is a debunked study by a guy who lost his medical license for falsifying data. There's no link between vaccines and autism. However, we cannot just say that vaccines are super safe for every single person all the time. That's not true. And that's all Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says. It has nothing to do with there's no conspiracy theory on my end. I'm not that guy. They're not putting microtransmitters in the vaccines to keep an eye on you. No one cares. No one's doing that. But vaccines any medical intervention at all has negative side effects. Every one of them. There's not one that is 100% safe for every single person. It doesn't exist. So that's all he says. And they make him seem like a crazy person because of this. I like him. He seems like an honest guy. He seems like a traditional Democrat, like his father and his uncle. I have no problems with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And it's a big deal that when he dropped out of this race, when he did what he did this week, he endorsed Donald Trump. He's a Democrat, and he endorsed Donald Trump. And that is a huge deal in this race, because there were people who had him polling as high as 5% in some of the swing states, which means that this could tip certain states like Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin in Donald Trump's favor, because he endorsed Donald Trump. A lot of those voters are going to vote for Trump now. It's a gigantic move in this race, and what that means. And what I thought was crazy is that you're actually having Democrats now who are suing to keep him on the ballot. You want to talk about underhanded, dirty politics. They know that people, if Robert F. Kennedy Jr. appears on the ballot, will vote for him, despite the fact that he has asked to be removed from the ballot. People will vote for him because they don't want to vote for Donald Trump. They think that by keeping him on the ballot, he could still play a spoiler to Donald Trump, and they're suing to keep his name on the ballot. He has dropped out of the race. He wants out, and the Democratic Party is suing to keep him on the ballot in the swing states. It's ridiculous. It is what would be a great word for it? A dirty, underhanded, sneaky, nasty political move. I feel like if you're going to trick people, then you're doing something morally wrong. And that's what the Democrats are doing right now with him. Similar news, we're not really getting into this topic, but Cornel West just won the ability to appear on all the ballots, which is great because he should have the right. I don't understand why Cornel West couldn't appear on the ballots. He's a big name. He has donors. He's met a lot of the thresholds. They sued to keep him off the ballot because they're worried he'll play spoiler to Kamala. And I think that that's ridiculous. I think if someone meets the threshold, they got to be on the ballot. If you ask to be taken off the ballot, you should be off the ballot. It doesn't work. The Democrats are just playing dirty politics right now, which is nonsense. I have something in a very similar vein to the last clip I was showing here. Let me see if I can't pull it up. Here we go. So this is what I mean. This is what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is talking about when he's talking about the media is just a wing of the Democratic Party. This is what he means. He is talking about a clip that went around this week. Senator Tom Cotton, he's from Arkansas. He was on ABC with Jonathan Karl, and they had this exchange, which was fascinating. Check this out.
So, but look, we know the race will probably come down to a few 100,000 votes in a few states. President Trump has been campaigning hard and vigorously now for months. Obviously, that's going to increase in its pace as we get closer to the election. And President Trump is going to draw a sharp contrast with Kamala Harris, who has supported things like decriminalizing illegal immigration or giving taxpayer-funded health insurance to illegal aliens or taking away health insurance on the job for 170 million Americans, banning gas cars, confiscating firearms.
What do you mean taking away health insurance? What are you talking about?
She said when she ran for president that she wants to eliminate private health insurance on the job for 170 million Americans, John.
Yeah, I mean that is not her position now.
How do you know that's not her position? How do you know that's not her position?
I mean, she says she no longer supports Medicare for all.
She has not said that. Okay. Maybe anonymous aides on a Friday night have said that, but the last thing that she said...
Well, this was not a radical convention. I mean, she as you heard me go through with Bernie Sanders, she is not taking the positions of the far left of her party. She's clearly making an effort to move to the middle.
I did hear what you said to Senator Sanders, and I thought it was clear that he's very disappointed that she's taking these efforts not to change her positions, but to hide her positions, John. The American...
So this is exactly what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is talking about when he talks about the Democratic Party and the corporate media being in bed together. This is it. Tom Cotton says Kamala Harris has in the past given her support for X, Y, and Z. He is saying all these radical policies that she has articulated when she was running for president. And of them, he mentions she wants to take health care away for 170 million Americans. This is when she said she wanted to abolish insurance through the workplace. She wanted basically Medicare for all, and she wanted to get rid of private insurance, which would have taken insurance away from 170 million people. And Jonathan Karl feels the need to jump in and say, well, she doesn't believe that anymore. And Tom Cotton goes, how do you know? How do you know that? And he says, well, she said, and he said, no, that's not true. What are you doing? That's a lie. You don't get to just say that she said that. She didn't say that. Kamala Harris has never come out and disavowed these positions that she held, these radical positions that she took in 2020 to try and win the presidential nomination. She is not coming out and addressing them in a speech. She hasn't addressed them in an interview. She hasn't released written words about them. She has obfuscated everything that she believes in. She's doing an interview, her first interview in over a month. It's going to be 40 days since she took the nomination, and she has not done an interview. She's doing her first one, and it's a tag team interview with Tim Walz. And basically, this interview is going to be very friendly. It's going to be very nice. They're going to not talk about anything. There's going to be no real pushback from Dana Bash, who's going to do it. She hasn't done interviews. She cannot articulate her positions, and they won't let Tim Walz do interviews because her policies aren't actually set. And they don't want him to say something that contradicts her policies. Her own vice president doesn't understand what she believes because she won't tell anyone. She doesn't want anyone to know. She's a radical. First of all, she actually doesn't know anything. The people around her don't want anyone to know what they really want because she's lying to you. She's lying to you. She cannot articulate her positions because she doesn't do interviews because she's not bright. That's the truth. She's not a smart person. There's not a nice way to say that. And people will say that this is a criticism of her because she's a woman, or worse, if they try and accuse me of because she's black. Oh, you're only saying that because she's black. It's not true. I think I've said this numerous times on the podcast. Barack Obama, whether you like him, whether you hate him, whether you think his policies are good, whether you think they're evil, very intelligent. He is a really smart person. You don't write like Barack Obama if you're not smart. It is not something that people can do. You do not write the way that he writes if you are a dumb person. He is a very smart guy. This has nothing to do with her race or her gender. Ayaan Hirsi Ali, you don't write like Ayaan Hirsi Ali if you're a dumb person. So this has anything to do with her race or gender, but it's so easy to pretend that it does because it undermines the person who's making the argument. When I say Kamala Harris isn't bright, it's because she talks like a speak and spell. She can't write. She says and does things that no person I know with above a room level IQ would ever do or say. When she talks about her love of Venn diagrams and yellow buses, and she says we reside in a place in time because it's back there and it's in there and we go around and the time is here, and you go, what are you talking about? What does your brain work in a circular motion? Do you just continually feed into these ideas and think that you're saying something of merit? I don't understand how anyone doesn't go out there, say things like that, and then just be so embarrassed they have to crawl in a hole for the rest of their life. she's not a bright person. She can't do interviews. She doesn't want you to know her policies. She's trying to get out of the debate with Donald Trump. All that talk about, oh, Donald Trump is afraid to debate Kamala Harris. Well, her team has come in now and tried to change the rules of the debate. They've tried to say that now, oh, well, we have to be sitting down to do the debate. Oh, the microphones, now they have to stay on because Donald Trump agreed to all the rules on an unfriendly network like ABC to do the debate, and yet now Kamala Harris wants to change the rules and then pretend that Donald Trump's the one running away from the debate. They don't want her to debate. She's not a good debater because she's not smart, because she just isn't. I don't know what to tell you. The woman seems like she doesn't read a lot. That's what I mean. And she's not out there very quick-witted, sharp on her feet. I don't think Donald Trump reads books, but I think he's got some sort of intelligence that gives him an instinctual ability to hit where he needs to hit. And again, I'm not saying Donald Trump is that bright. I think he's smart in a certain way, in a way that works for him. And he's funny, which will play a lot. And you're actually not funny if you're not somewhat smart. It's hard to be really dumb and funny. It's a difficult thing to do. I'm not saying there aren't people who do it. I'm just saying that even people who are quote-unquote dumb, like think about a guy like Larry the Cable Guy, for example, playing a character. Most people, dumb people who are really funny, they're playing a character. That's what they're doing. Donald Trump is funny. I don't think he's the kind of guy. He's not going out there and reading 500-page white papers. But Kamala Harris doesn't read at all. She's not funny. She doesn't think well on her feet. This is not what you want in a president. And she certainly doesn't want to debate Donald Trump, because all it's going to take is one line from him and she's going to have no responses. She is content to sit and pretend that she doesn't exist for the next 70 days, the next 2 months, and it might work. She's pulling the Joe Biden basement strategy. Just stay in the basement, let Donald Trump go out there, and people will vote for you because you're not Donald Trump. It could work for her. And the media should be ashamed of themselves for allowing it to work. It's embarrassing how, as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said, how we basically have state-run media at this point. They might as well be DNC, the network. You're talking about ABC, NBC, MSNBC, all of these shows, CNN that pretends to be nonpartisan. They all just favor her and they fawn over her like she is the next coming of Jesus, and just in high heels. And it doesn't make any sense to me how anyone believes that this woman is capable of being president. I don't get it. I don't know. She's just going to sit there and lie. Like this advertisement that she has put up on the internet machine. So check this one out. This is a real advertisement from Kamala Harris's campaign. Look at this. The ad is called Fixing the
Kamala
Border.
Harris has spent decades fighting violent crime. As a border state prosecutor, she took on drug cartels and jailed gang members for smuggling weapons and drugs across the border. As vice president, she backed the toughest border control bill in decades. And as president, she will hire thousands more border agents and crack down on fentanyl and human trafficking. Fixing the border is tough. So is Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Be sure to
Okay. Did anyone notice anything about that ad? We're going to pretend that Kamala Harris is tough on the border. We're going to pretend for a second that she's tough on the border. There were 4 separate shots of the border wall that Donald Trump built in that advertisement. She's tough on the border. Is she in charge of anything? How about this? What about this for a chart? Oh, Kamala Harris, tough on the border. Look at this chart. Migrant encounters rise at southern U.S. border. Here's the number of migrant encounters at the U.S.-Mexico border by fiscal year. What do you know? I'm going to scroll down here a little bit so you can see a little better. Okay. So this goes all the way back to 2013. Obviously, you could get a longer one, but here just shows you something. 2013 to 2020, there's basically a flat rate. It stays around 500,000. You had one big year in 2019 when Donald Trump was president. It almost reached 1 million people, which was a lot. But as you can see, it's for the last, 7, 8 years before that, very consistently the same. What happens? The Kamala Harris, Joe Biden administration takes over in 2021. What do you see here? A tripling from the previous year, over 3 times as many border crossings. And then it goes up the next year. 2021, you have over 1.5 million. 2022, you have damn near 2.5 million. 2023, 2.5 million. This is only the people who were apprehended. This doesn't even include some of the gotaways. So you're talking millions of people. Look at every other president. This is Obama. This is Trump. You're talking relatively similar numbers all across the board. The number of encounters rise so substantially under her administration, and we're supposed to pretend that she's tough on the border. Kamala Harris, she's going to be tough on the border. How about we just take actual quotes from actual things that Kamala Harris said about the border? When she called, in 2019, she said that Donald Trump's wall was, quote, a medieval vanity project that wasn't going to stop transnational gangs from entering the U.S. Oh, okay. Does that sound like she's pro the border wall? Doesn't sound like it, but yet she's showing it in her advertisement. How about February 2020? On Facebook, she wrote, quote, Trump's border wall is a complete waste of taxpayer money and won't make us any safer, end quote. Does it sound like she's pro border wall? Why is it in her advertisement? April 2017, she said the wall was a, quote, stupid waste of money. I will block any funding for it, end quote. This was when she was in the Senate. Does it sound like she likes the border wall? She's going to stop funding for the border wall. How about these videos? We like to bring receipts here on the Chrestman Conversation. What about these videos right here? How about this
Talking
one?
tonight about these government health care plans that you proposed in one form or another. This is a show of hands question, and hold them up for a moment so people can see. Raise your hand if your government plan would provide coverage for undocumented immigrants.
All right. Would your health care plan provide for illegal immigrants? Hey, look at that. Who's that right there on the stage? Is that Kamala Harris with her hand raised? I believe it is. She sounds like she's going to be real tough on illegal immigration, doesn't she? She wants to give them free health care. How about this video right here?
We had a very spirited debate on this stage last night on the topic of decriminalization of the border. If you'd be so kind, raise your hand if you think it should be a civil offense rather than a crime to cross the border without documentation. Can we keep the hands up so we can see them?
Wait a minute. Who is that with their hand up right there? Is that Kamala Harris saying that she wants to decriminalize border crossings? Well, does that sound like she's going to be tough on illegal immigration? She wants to make it not a criminal offense to cross the border. She's actually literally coming out and saying she wants to make it not a crime. Okay, how about that? Well, why don't we let her defend herself? How about in her own words? Can she just explain some of her policies? How about this?
Okay. You're for decriminalizing border crossings. You're one of the people that raised hands at the debate. Do you agree with AOC that we should get rid of DHS altogether?
That is not correct. I'm not in favor of decriminalizing or not having consequence for it. We have to keep, let me just be very clear. We have to have a secure border.
Let me just stop right there. Whenever Kamala Harris gets frustrated, she says, let me be very clear. And then she proceeds to say a bunch of gobbledygook. So watch out for that here in this clip, because every time she starts fumbling, she'll say something like, let me be very clear. And then she says absolutely nothing. Let's continue.
Border. But I am in favor of saying that we're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals. That's correct. That is correct. And what we've got to do is we cannot have any more policy like we have under this current president that is about inhumane conduct, that is about putting babies in cages, it is about separating children from their parents. And we have got to have policy that is about passing comprehensive immigration reform with a pathway towards citizenship, shutting down these private
Clarify this for me, though, because I do find it confusing. Yes. I believe if someone crosses over the border, it is illegal, and you would decriminalize it.
I would not make it a crime punishable by jail. It should be a civil enforcement issue, but not a criminal enforcement issue.
Okay.
There should be, you got to play by the rules, but we can't treat people like criminals.
Okay. Does that sound like somebody who wants to be tough on the border? Kamala Harris, she was a prosecutor for decades. She was a terrible prosecutor. Look into her record. I've gone over it before in the past. Look into her record when she was the DA of San Francisco and tell me she's a tough on crime prosecutor. She wasn't. How about when she was Attorney General of California? Was she going after people? What was she doing? Was she tough? No. She was bad at her job. In every step of the way, she's been bad at her job. We can pretend that she's not the borders are, or that Joe Biden never said she wanted to put her in charge of the border. There have been more illegal immigrant crossings under Joe Biden than we've had at any time in recent history for decades. 40 years, we have an immigration high that's from 40 years ago. This is the last time we had immigration numbers, illegal immigration numbers, this bad under her administration. Where is Joe Biden? Joe Biden's on vacation. He has nothing on his presidential schedule. She is, in effect, running the government right now. She's doing a bad job. She did a bad job on the border. And no matter how many slick advertisements you want to put out, it doesn't change the fact that she is bad at her job. Don't be fooled by this, people. She is a liar. She can't even articulate her own position because the reality is that her position will sway with the wind. I do not think she is ideologically driven. I think she wants to be beloved. I think she will go wherever people tell her to go because she wants people to like her, and she just wants to win. And all she wants to do is win, win, win. And I don't mind that mindset, except that she has no principles. She has no foundational beliefs. I would love to win. If you said to me, Tyler, you can compromise all your beliefs and be president of the United States, I would say no. I'm not really interested in being president. And also, what the hell is the point? I don't need to be beloved by anybody. I don't care. If people like me or don't like me, it does not bother me. I would like people to like me. I said this before. I would love for everyone to just love me. It'd be great. But I'm never going to change who I am. And I don't respect people who would. And she is clearly that person. She couldn't even articulate on The View what her actual beliefs about the border are without having to stop and say, wait, no, let me be clear. We're going to keep the border tough, but we're going to decriminalize it, and you got to play by the rules, but we're going to change the rules so that you can do whatever you want. It's nonsense. She is a liar. She lies every step of the way, and it doesn't matter because there's no one to hold her account. So you have to be smart as a voter. You have to do it yourself. You have to look into these things. Don't listen to what someone says. Don't listen to what I say. If I tell you something, I can promise you I'm going to try and tell you the truth as I see it. I'm not going to try and make something up about people to make them look bad or to help Donald Trump. I'm not going to do this. When I say things, it's because I believe them. But don't just listen to me. Do your own research. Go out there and find someone who disagrees with me. Read that, listen to them, and then come to your own conclusions. Listen to what the people say. Don't listen to what I'm telling you Kamala Harris is saying. Go find out for yourself. I show you the clips because I love to be able to pull up some things that I can show you and say, these are her words. This is what she's saying. But as we know with Donald Trump, you can take these things out of context and make someone look bad. So I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to be fair and tell you what she was saying. She raised her hand to these questions, her beliefs in her words. But it's up to you to figure out whether or not you support what she thinks or don't. And we have to hope because no one else is going to hold her to account. The media won't. It's going to be up to you. You have to do it yourself because no one's going to do it for you. You have to be an educated voter. You have to try your best to actually look into things and figure out who it is you're going to support and why. So many people, I've seen videos of this going around. It drives me nuts. So many people will say, I'm voting for Kamala. Okay, fine. You want to vote for Kamala? That's your prerogative. Do what you want. I think you're making a bad choice, but that's up to you. You can make that choice. I don't care. It's fine. But don't not be able to answer this question. I've seen people in videos go up. They say, I'm voting for Kamala. And they say, well, great. What do you like about her? They'll say, oh, she's a woman. She's a person of color. We need a strong female president. And they say, great. Can you name me one policy or an accomplishment that she has that you support? And people go, I don't. No. The answer is no, they can't. Don't be that person. Don't vote for someone if you don't know why. And if the reason why you're voting for them has to do with their gender or their sexual orientation or their skin color, you are making a mistake. It's a bad way to choose people to lead this country if you start picking them by their attributes that are physical. It'd be like if we just were picking someone based on how pretty they were. It's fine. Everyone wants to pick a pretty woman or a handsome man. That's great. But if that was the criteria that you were using to judge an election, then you're making a mistake. And it's the same if you're using skin color or what they have between their legs as a metric for who you want to lead you. It is a bad way to choose people. You need to choose them by their ideas, because ideas are what matter. Ideas are what direction our country is going to head in is based on the ideas that are in her head. It's not based on the fact that she has, I don't remember what the term is, but she doesn't have a dangler between her legs. That's not the determining factor. The fact that, her mom is Indian and her dad's Caribbean. Who cares? I don't care. What? Why should that matter at all in terms of why I would pick her or why I wouldn't pick her? I don't care. She has bad ideas. The reality is she has no ideas. All the ideas that she has are stolen from other people, and those are bad ideas. She doesn't even steal good ideas, except when she steals from Donald Trump. So, like the no tax on tips, and we're going to build the border wall. Those are Donald Trump policies. Why are you voting for her? If you like those policies, that's why you're voting for her. Vote for Donald Trump. He's better. Oh, getting all worked up over here. It's ridiculous. It's like, well, I guess actually it's the afternoon. Now I was going to say it's still the morning. No, it's afternoon over here when I'm recording this. But still, it's a little early to get worked up. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there for the week. As always, comment, like, subscribe. Comments on YouTube are always appreciated, people. I hope that everyone out there has a great week, and I will catch you guys next Friday.